You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I'm here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
I'm not going to talk to you.
Why?
I'm being passive aggressive. That's one of my favorite techniques.
Well, that's not true.
I learned it as a child.
Well, you may have learned it, but I would, without any reservation, say that of all the people I know,
See how skilled I am?
experience you as the least passive aggressive.
See how skilled I am?
Well, you can say that. I mean, and I know a little bit about your history, and so I certainly believe that you were taught to be passive aggressive, but you either unlearned that or have really worked hard to.
It's no longer reflexive and automatic.
Yeah.
I still struggle with issues of oppositional defiant disorder. I don't like authority, and I bow my back and balk when somebody says, because I said so, whoever that might be. But I've learned that I can respond in other ways than being passive aggressive.
Well, in my experience, anytime anyone has ever
Directly confronted me?
and said, because I said so, your response is usually to be very quiet and walk away and then leave and then not do that thing. But I mean, I've always seen you as completely 100% in control of your own destiny. I've never seen you bow to someone else because they gave you an ultimatum.
It made me sound pretty good. I would like me if I met me.
Yeah.
So,
even though that's true, even though that may be true,
that's your objective reality,
passive aggression is a thing that a lot of people engage in, and a lot of other
because they're conflict avoidant,
deal with.
For one reason, they either can't afford to display conflict behaviors, like if you have an authority figure that tells you to do something and or asks you a question or confronts you and says you have to answer me, you have to say it this way, which my father used to do on a regular basis, or not. I mean, if you have a situation where you feel like it's not safe to express yourself truthfully, then you learn how to express yourself appropriately, but still try to do what you want to do and include a little message, because you think you're smarter than they are. You think you can put a dig in the conversation and they won't recognize it, or that you set a time bomb that'll go off later when you're not in the physical proximity, so you can get away with it. But passive aggressive is a highly skilled response pattern.
And I associate passive aggressive, passive aggression, defensiveness, and adolescence as all kind of in the same.
So you say most adolescents go through a phase of being passive aggressive?
I think all adolescents. I think
it's because of the power differential.
Yeah. I think that's universal, whether or not you display it in adulthood. So when I talk to clients and they're telling me about the passive aggressive behavior of their children or of their significant other,
I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
you as a parent sit your child down and say you're going to sit at the dinner table until you get your homework finished. I don't care if it takes till midnight. So the child will sit there till midnight, get his homework finished, and then lose it on the way to school, not turn it in, because you made him do it. He had to acquiesce to your power. He did it, but he's not going to turn it in, so that you don't get the satisfaction of a good grade coming home because he sabotaged it. But he will claim, oh, I lost it. You know I did it. I sat right there in front of you and did it. So it's not on me. Or the teacher lost it. I turned it in, but they must have lost it. Had those experiences many times as a teacher.
Oh, absolutely.
And as a parent.
Yeah. And as a spouse, how does it look? Or significant other.
Your significant other expects that you're going to do something that you know that you're not going to do, and you have no intention of doing, but you don't make that known. You allow them to think that you're going to do whatever it is or say whatever. And then when the time comes, you just don't do it. And then you say, oh, I forgot. Or somebody else interrupted me. I wasn't able to. The store was closed, whatever. But you don't take ownership of your refusal.
So passive aggression, at its core, clinical diagnosis.
I allow you to think that I am in agreement with you when I'm not even remotely in agreement with you.
Well, it's the commission of an aggressive act through passivity.
Well, I guess I would say non-compliant. I would not honor the expectation.
Yeah.
Or the command.
But so
and it dovetails in with being oppositional defiant.
Right. So if I see, the wheelbarrow rolling down the hill, and I can see that it's going to run over your phone, but I'm mad at you, and I don't stop the wheelbarrow, that's passive aggression.
And then and then later you say, "I told you not to leave your phone there."
Yeah.
How do you? My God, when are you going to learn? Why don't you grow up? Why don't you be responsible? I can't believe you leave your phone there when wheelbarrows come through here.
Yeah, they're coming through here all the time.
Well, I know a lot of adult males that come in the house and throw their wallet and their keys down somewhere. And then the family plays this game. Where's Daddy's keys?
Yeah.
Where's Daddy's wallet? Well, hell, Daddy should know where his keys in his wallet are. They should be in his pocket. But he throws them down wherever they happen to be. And then it's a family game of let's find the keys. Everybody's in the car waiting to go, and Daddy can't find his keys. It's BS. But lots of people play those games.
Why? Why do they play them?
Because they're passive aggressive. They get a payoff.
But okay.
I can't confront you directly and say, I don't want to go to church because you're going to make me go to church. You're going to give me 2 hours of lectures about going to church. So I'll go get in the car. But you don't have your keys. I know where they are, but I'm not going to tell you. So, it's not on me.
So what's the payoff?
The payoff is I see your frustration, and we may, if it takes you long enough to solve the problem, may not have to go to church.
Well, but ultimately isn't the payoff...
But it's not on me.
Right, so the payoff is control. So the payoff is the perception of control in an otherwise uncontrollable situation.
When I don't ostensibly have the power, but I can determine the outcome.
Right.
It's verbiage, but yeah.
So you have oftentimes told the story of a family that came to therapy with you, and the dad would bloviate, and then the daughter would touch his knee and he would immediately shut up. And we have oftentimes talked about where is the power in the family, and it's codified in the eldest daughter, even though the family pretends.
They all pretend they don't know that, but they do. I mean, it's not a structured role of authority. She's not the mom. She's not the dad. She's not the adult. But she, and quite often with adolescents and family dynamics, the adolescents are in control. Especially like in a divorce situation where the adolescent son is living with the mom, and the mom comes in saying, I can't control him. He steals my car. He goes driving around. I tell him I'm going to take his cell phone. He says, if you take my cell phone, I'm going to break your TV. So I can't control him. So here, you fix him. Bring the child in to talk to you.
I just this week watched, I'm embarrassed to say, but saw a TikTok of this demolished, I'm talking like broke the toilets, like the ceramic toilets, demolished house. This woman is walking through her home with her cell phone to I don't know, either create a record of what this child had done, or because she just thought that she could get a lot of likes. I don't know what her motivation was, but she's walking through this house, and the kicker at the end is that the child did this because somebody took away his cell phone. They took away his cell phone, and he destroyed. I mean, I'm not every single room in the house, and the only thing that I can think of is, how did every single person in this child's life stand there and watch this kid destroy the house?
Did he do it when nobody was there?
When nobody was there? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But these are the kinds of things that we deal with in therapy, is that you try as a parent to parent your child, and a part of that is to take away privileges when they act inappropriately, and then if the child goes
doesn't
through
see a cell phone as a privilege.
no, but and they don't see destroying your house as something that is a negative.
Yeah.
And or if they do, they don't at the time that they're doing this. And so the question is, how can the child be, allowed to do these things? Maybe you can't control a child who is aggressively acting out in that moment, but do you believe that there are any unfixable kids? Any unfixable adolescents?
Define fixable. Can I make him be safely in your house until a certain age?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe there are some kids that can't be done with.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And so, there are some situations that are beyond the adult's ability to be able to control. And so we're not talking about that. But for the most part, in my experience, the reason why there are passive aggressive or even overtly aggressive children is because there are parents who abdicate their right to be the authority figure in the household. Would you agree with that statement?
I don't know, Michael. You
because I'm doing the universal thing again.
Yeah, you are. You frame these things as absolutes. They are fluid, and I think as a therapist, I want to get a grasp of the family dynamics to see what are the fluid balances. How do the parents communicate their expectations to the child? How do they try to enforce their expectations? What is the child actually hearing? What does the child see? How honest are the parents about who and what they are? I used to talk to parents all the time, give talks to parents about children watch you the way a scientist in a laboratory watches his test tubes. And they see your hypocrisy and your dishonesty. And so when you say, don't lie, don't lie, don't lie, and the phone rings, you say, tell them I'm not home.
Right.
There's a message there.
And the one that I used to use is, don't drink and drive, don't drink and drive, don't drink and drive. You go to dinner and order a drink.
Yeah. Or you say, don't steal. Don't steal, don't steal. Kid says, I need some paper and pens for school tomorrow. I'll bring some home from the office. And you bring them home, and they clearly say Missouri Pacific Railroad on them. You didn't buy those at Target. You stole them from the Missouri Pacific Railroad. So I see that as a child. What you're telling me is, I can do it, but you can't do it because I'm a grown-up and I know better. Then you say, be respectful to your mother. Don't talk to your mother disrespectfully. And a lot of the dads that I've heard say that, it's all about the power of the male. No one speaks to my wife that way. I'll break your jaw. Okay, so you say that. And then you talk to your wife that way. Well, it's different because I'm the one in charge. But the child sees that. The adolescent male says, this is a way that men treat women. And that's what he internalizes. That's what he learns. And he gets away with that. So he talks to his sister that way. Dad doesn't say anything because he's not talking to mom that way.
Right.
But you see those behaviors occur. You want to massage those dynamics and put those messages on the table. Look at what we're looking at. Look at what we're learning. Look at what we're communicating. And are we doing what we want to do?
So what we are saying, and maybe in a roundabout way, so I want to make it more clear, is passive aggression is a learned behavior.
Or a required behavior. I am not allowing you
but it's still
to
learned.
Curse.
Yeah.
I'm not allowing you to say no. You can't say no to me. I'm the dad.
Right.
So you don't have the option to say no. So what you do is passive aggressively perform. You do your homework and then you lose it on the way to school.
You put the individual in an unresolvable power conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then they resolve it for themselves. And this is the thing.
But in some way that they can't be truly accountable for.
But they are in control of.
Yeah.
And so that's the irony of human behavior, is that we're always trying to control things that we can't, which are the behaviors of other people, while at the same time giving up the only thing that we actually have control of, which is our own behavior. And so we say, oh, well, I had to hit him because he was making fun of me.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't have to hit him because he was making fun of you. But so one of the things that we want to say is that passive aggression is a learned or a one down power situation.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'll ask. Do you think that a teenager who indulges in cutting is doing a passive aggressive behavior?
I would no, because it's not passive.
Well, it's hidden.
They're doing it, but they're doing
You
it.
don't know I'm doing it. I'm keeping it from you. You told me not
is
to
it
cut.
is it passive aggressive toward the parent?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking what you think.
No. Cutting
It's a way
is,
to communicate. It's a way to say I'm in pain,
well,
I'm in trouble.
I don't know that it is a communication. I don't think that cutting is a communication. I think that cutting is an attempt on the individual an attempt by the individual to feel things because otherwise they
otherwise
can't.
feel.
Yeah. So there's an inherent payoff
Yeah.
for the individual. Now other people looking at it don't see that payoff.
Right.
It's not the same to them, but it is real for the individual.
Yeah.
And so I don't
don't
count
see
that
much.
as passive aggression.
Okay.
Because I think that they're doing that for a very real and for what for them is a very logical reason.
Yeah, and so the distinction that I would make differently there is they're doing that to themselves for a message to themselves or a relief that they get from the behavior.
Yeah.
Whereas passive aggressive is setting up a situation where you get a message.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's no
You can't
payoff in
control
passive aggression unless the other person figures it out.
Exactly. Or is affected by it
Yeah.
in the way that you intend.
Right. Okay, let's go to our break and we'll pick this up on the other side.
Yeah.
You know, if you've gotten this far into the show, then obviously you find the show to be worthwhile, beneficial, maybe even helpful. And so I just wanted to say, if you've gotten this far into the show and you want to help us out, even if you don't want to help us out, just do it anyway. Go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and leave a review. That is super helpful. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications when new shows drop. That stuff is really, really helpful for us. And I know that Mr. Brett agrees.
Absolutely. Reviews are positive. Positive reviews are more positive, but negative ones are as well because it helps you decide how to focus and how whatever you're intending to say is being heard.
And the secret is the algorithm doesn't care whether the review's positive or negative.
As our friend Mike Norton says regularly, feedback is a gift.
If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. And so for the second half of the show, what I want to do is we focused on how that looks in young people. Now let's talk about what that looks like. So you've been conditioned into this passive aggressive way of communication as a young person. You get to be an adult and you're still going to be that way. Right? You're not going to stop that. So we started the show by talking about you're one of the least passive aggressive people that I know. And you said, well, but I was trained to be passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So you know that you had to at some point actually say, I want to stop this behavior in me because I don't like it. Is that?
Yeah.
Do you remember actually having that?
Whatever the trigger was?
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, and that's fair. Yeah. But you had to recognize that the passive aggressive behavior was not meeting the actual need that you wanted to get met, and then you had to change that behavior in a way that met that need more.
Well, I tried to pretty aggressively, and found that I was getting better results from not being passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that we want to put out there for people is that to the extent that anybody thinks that passive aggression satisfies a need, even if you're not consciously aware of it right now, if you actually sit down and think about it, there are other more appropriate, more direct ways of getting that need met that will be better for you. Right?
Yeah.
Would you say there's ever a case where passive aggression is the individual's only choice?
Yes.
Or best choice?
Yes.
Okay, when is that?
In a completely power-controlled environment.
So if I'm in the gulag, then passive aggression could be a way for me to get my needs met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
if
agree
I
with that.
overtly am disagreeing with the authority, I could get killed, or
Yeah.
I could get tortured, or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on how much. That's the Stockholm syndrome thing about people that are captured in a cult and have to believe whatever the cult tells them to believe. As long as they're under the physical control of the cult, they express that. Hey, I'm all on board here. Hallelujah, amen. When they're no longer physically controlled, they say, "Oh my God, those people are so crazy. I don't believe that. I don't do that." But then they did,
Right?
Because it's the only safe way to exist.
Right. So, in a situation where you legitimately do not have power, or asserting power could be potentially even existentially threatening,
Right.
then passive aggression may be the most effective way to get your needs met. But for most of us, that situation is between an adult and a child. So adults train their children
Yeah, but it's also
to be passive
hierarchically
aggressive.
It can be between a boss and an employee.
Well, sure.
Okay.
But most of us learn our passive aggression from adult to child.
Yeah.
And so now I'm an adult and I've been trained to be passive aggressive. I may not recognize that I do that. I may not realize that I'm doing that to get a need met. And so the first thing is I got to be able to see that.
Well, you have to decide too, or I think it's important to try to clarify, as the adult who's been trained in passive aggressive behaviors. Now I'm the adult. Am I on the power side or the non-power side of the equation? Because my behaviors are going to be different. If I'm on the power side, I'm going to become a merciless autocrat. I told you to do that. I told you to clean that up. I'm paying your salary. Get your ass in there and clean that up. But it's not my job. My job's over here. And they hate unions. I remember a friend of mine who was an adult in authority at a corporation who just rant and raved about the problems that he got in trouble with at work, his supervisors, because they had the plumbers come in and hang water fountains on the wall. And they were hung, everything was running, everything was ready. It needed to be plugged in. And the plumber said, "I can't plug it in.
The electrician has to do that."
And the guy said, "Oh, I'll plug it in." He plugged it in. So then the electricians filed for a day's pay, and the plumbers filed for a day's pay. And then the boss called him in and said, "The hell are you doing? We're going to have labor difficulties. You're going to screw us all up. You can't behave this way." And he's like, "I just plugged it in." And, well, we have an agreement with the labor union that the electrician has to do that. So you get caught up in those things. Question then becomes, as the grown-up, which side of the power differential are you on, or do you think you're on? That'll determine how you behave.
So the power differential is really perceptual.
Yes.
Yes, because we already talked about the only thing I have control of is my own behavior. I don't have control of anybody else's.
Right.
So the power differential is really just a matter of perception.
In a hierarchy, that's not.
But we know that's true because in the family example that you gave, the dad looks like the autocrat, but all the power resided with the eldest daughter, even though the family pretended like they didn't know that.
In that example, yeah. I say at work situation, if I'm the autocratic boss, and I say, "You have to come in." Now that the pandemic's over, you have to come in 4 days a week. And you say, "I don't want to. I'm working effectively from home. I'd like to continue to work from home." I say, "You have to come in." So I make you come in and clock in. So then you file your nails, you pay your bills, you make a couple of phone calls, then you do a little work.
Right.
You know? So then I challenge you about all that, how you spend your time, and I get a program. I get a keylogger on my computer so I can say, "You only typed for 22 minutes in a 3-hour window." And then you come back with, "But I did this filing, and I had to read the documents, and I was interrupted because I had to go to a meeting, and so what?" You know? So they play these games, and they're power games. Mine's bigger than yours is. Well, I'm not impressed by that, so what are you going to do about it?
So you don't want to talk about what the trigger was, but do you remember
Yes.
how? No. I know you remember that, but do you remember what you did to try and then extricate yourself from that habitual reaction of passive aggression?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to consciously decide to behave differently.
Yes. And that's for anybody. When you're coming to therapy, that's the end goal, is that you have to decide to do things different. And so I was talking to somebody about this just yesterday. Cognitive behavior therapy is all about changing negative thinking into more positive, more productive thinking. That's the goal. It's a great therapy if the client is willing to do the work, right?
Right, that's true. Therapy in
of
general.
anything.
Yeah.
But there we can really, really see how that is so essentially important. If the client doesn't do the work outside of therapy to change the way that they're thinking, it doesn't matter how good the therapy is. They're not going to get anything productive out of it. Yeah. And the same thing is true here. If you recognize that you may use passive aggression as a way of either making yourself feel better or making somebody else feel bad, the only way you're going to change that is to decide to act differently.
So I had a friend that it bothered me about my friend that he was somewhat arrogant to waiters and waitresses. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be served in a particular way. He didn't want them to be chatty Cathy.
And just for the record, this is not me.
You just want to be served. You don't have any particular way. So he didn't like waiters and waitresses to try to be amusing, tell jokes, ingratiate themselves with the table. He wanted them to come and be formal and appropriate and do whatever. And so they would float out a conversational tidbit, and he would be stiff and rigid and very quietly just say what he wanted. We're ready to order now. And I often wondered, because in my passive-aggressive days, if I had been the waiter, I would have spit in his food.
Yeah, man.
Or I would have deliberately sabotaged the order. Mm-hmm. Oh, you wanted that medium well. Sorry, it's well. Mm-hmm. I'll tell the chef. But I would have caused you a distressful or unhappy dinner because you thought you had power over me and could treat me as a non-person. Mm-hmm. And I watched that play out a number of times. I don't know if anybody ever did it. I was worried about whether or not they were spitting in my food.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of the way he ordered. But what I never did do was say to my friend, this is problematic. Mm-hmm. Because, again, you pick your battles. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, that's playing out in his life. I don't behave that way. So if life forces him to confront it, then he'll confront it. If it doesn't, what's it to me? I mean, again, you have to decide.
And the only thing that you can do is decide whether or not you go to dinner with him.
Yeah. Yes.
If it's worth it to you.
Well, and I can decide how I'm going to model my own interactive behavior with the waiter. I may choke and jive with the waiter while he's being a jerk.
So before...
don't spit in my food because I like it.
I'm a nice guy.
Me, I'm really... Yeah, exactly.
Before we close the show, I just wanted to give at least tacit acknowledgement to the things. So there are 3 things that this article talks about. Yeah. And supposedly...
Nonverbal. And the author is an expert in nonverbal behavior.
From Harvard.
Yeah. Well, that's a nonverbal statement right there.
Well, it's passive aggressive.
Oh.
I mean, the whole title is passive aggressive. And so when I first read that, I'm like, what the heck? And then I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
The title is passive aggressive. But what I realized, I do all 3 of these things.
Yeah.
And then I was like,
one of the ways you're passive aggressive is you don't return phone calls.
Holy
cow. People call you, and then they call me. It's like, I called the guy, he doesn't respond. He didn't call me back. It's been 3 days.
That's old. Well, first
off,
it
may be old, but
first off, I wonder.
It's long lived.
First off, I wonder how many people feel like that they need to get a response in that time. I mean,
we're not defensive, are we?
Well, that's passive aggressive. Huh. But I don't think I do that anymore. I think I'm pretty.
You changed.
I think I'm pretty responsive nowadays. But yes, that was a thing that was horrible. I was horrible about that. But so then I looked at this and I said, oh, I see how I do all 3 of these things.
But what you just did is a perfect example, and I appreciate you providing that. Your initial reaction was to dismiss the complainer. They're just being stupid. I don't do that. And then you said, I looked at the behavior, I listened to the complaints, I said, I want to change that behavior.
No,
so you did?
No, I know I do it. I know I did it. I don't think I do it
You
anymore.
did it. But when I bring it up to you, your first response is to be dismissive. Oh, it's not a big thing.
I wasn't trying to be dismissive. I was trying to acknowledge that not only have I changed, but the idea that they are expecting a response within a certain period of time is in and of itself passive aggressive.
Oh, I don't think so.
Why should anybody be able to say, "Oh, I contacted you, you should contact." Now, if it's a professional thing and you say, "Oh, professional, you should respond within 24 hours." I mean, I don't know what the rules are, but why would somebody say, "Oh, I contacted you, you didn't call me back in 3 days and I'm upset." Why should that be?
Because they are.
No.
And they're trying not to be passive aggressive. I'm upset you didn't call me back, dang it. I think that's legitimate.
What if
you have to deal with what is? So then you say, well, my wife was in the hospital, my kids were sick, I had to take the dog to the vet. Okay, that makes sense to me. I understand that.
And we're speaking out of school. I mean, this is out of context. We don't even know what are the communications.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. But I will own that I absolutely at one point in my life did that.
Do that. Yeah.
I will own that I do the things that are on this list. And so
what are the things on the list?
Extreme brevity. So you send your boss an email asking, should we go ahead and schedule a meeting with this potential client? So you don't actually add any context to things that you're doing. That puts you in a one-up power situation. The briefer you are, the more power you are assuming.
Yeah.
So that's brevity. Slow responses, getting a silent treatment can show up as delayed emails or text. This is what you were just talking about. So yes, I did that at one point in my life. I know I was horrible about that. And then the last one, I'm embarrassed, but I know I do it all the time, changing from informal to formal language. And I recognize, like, I'll be talking to somebody, and if my quills get bristled, I know I do that I will change into formal language to show you how smart I am and how you better not mess with me. I want to do that at the drop of a hat. And so these are things that I know I do and I know are part of me.
Are you telling us all then you've discovered you have passive aggressive tendencies?
Oh no, I've known that for forever. No. But what I'm saying is, now that I see those things, now I have the ability.
Yeah, you have the option in front of you. I can choose to do it differently.
Like the slow to respond thing, I recognize that. There came a time in my life where I recognized I shouldn't wait 72 hours to respond to something. And that person that you're talking about, I know has shared this with you, but has said to me, wow, I really appreciate the fact that you are so much better at that. And so that was something that I identified and I chose to do differently. But you can't choose to be different until you recognize what you're doing.
Right.
And so that's why for me, it's so important. Knowledge is power. Until you are aware.
But a little learning is a dangerous thing.
It is. But until you're aware that you're doing it, you can't choose to change it. And that's why I was really belaboring the point for you. Yeah. How did you go about doing that? Yes, you changed the behavior, but the only way to do that is to recognize that you're doing it in the first place. And
I had to change my entire life. I had to change the whole playing field.
But it's hard to do.
Well, yeah.
And it's awfully humbling to say, I do this, and maybe every single other person that I know also does this, but I'm going to change me because I can't control those other people.
So that's a conversation for another time, another day, but we can talk about codependency and the messages that you learn in a codependent environment. Because the only way out is to say, I'm not going to play. Mm-hmm. Same thing with passive aggressive.
Absolutely. Go on the internets, find us there, and subscribe to the show on YouTube. That is super helpful for us. Find us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a comment and a rating. That really helps other people be able to find the show, and that is super beneficial, and we would really appreciate that. As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.